then you combine that with there's just the negative stigma of mental health. I mean, it's just, I wish that there was a way that we could rebrand that, and maybe there's efforts to do that. But it's like you have cardio strength, and you have muscular strength, and you have networking strength. I mean, this is about exercising your mind and becoming stronger from that mental strength standpoint. I think it's a good thing to go out there to try to strengthen what you're capable of doing from a mental state. And I just wish there wasn't such a negative connotation
Well, I think it's
with
negative
that.
even just everything. Like we were talking earlier, is that the Virginia pilot released a thing about 3 new restaurants that closed due to the pandemic. And it's like, look, is this like, what did you guys do to support those businesses on the opposite end of this? And so like, oh my gosh, these 3 businesses closed. You're right. But you also weren't there for their opening ceremonies. So like, bad on you for playing this game of clickbait of, oh, let's talk trash about these businesses who closed, who actually, put everything on the line to stay open. And yet you think it's cool that we're going to put this negative post up there. Yes, I get it. It's news. It's the truth. They closed, and likely due to the pandemic. But again, did you do everything from a journalistic perspective? Did you do everything from a media capability to actually then go promote that business, or are you using it on the negative side? And that's something that's so silly and small, but it's like Tim said, it's all negative, and it's all negative. So then when people are looking for this help, they feel like, oh, well, I don't, and
Well,
it's aggravating.
yeah, the thing that I wish that, like, so bringing everything back around from a business owner standpoint, I
Mhm.
mean, one of the benefits and one of the perks, I mean, that I wish that would be offered today would be like, hey, go talk to a counselor proactively. Don't wait until things are really, really bad, and then you have to talk to someone to talk you off the ledge. I mean, people offer gym memberships and memberships to this group and that group. I think that it's something that would be really, really great. It's a great benefit to have, and I wish that that was offered.
And Tim, you mentioned that stigma and how there just seems to be a lot of just tension out there. And again, before the pandemic, there was a lot of stigma about mental illness and just mental health in general, right? But I think the way we continue to work together to dispel the stigma is to continue to normalize it, right? And to recognize, you know, just truly, everyone has been impacted mentally and probably financially and socially from this pandemic. It's just everybody has been impacted differently,
Hmm.
right? And I think the more that we have these type of conversations to say, it's not a matter of if you were impacted, it's a matter of how. And I think the more we can continue to, talk about it and to say we need to help each other. We need to do like what we're trying to do at EVMS and instill that culture of humility. And like you said, and previously, that we don't have to know all the answers, but you know what? We can be human beings and be sensitive enough to recognize that we're all hurting, we're all grieving, we're all suffering. And as we are all trying to, figure it out for ourselves, figure it out for our businesses and organizations, and figuring out for our society, let's try to be as positive realistically as we can be. And again, we can only control our own behaviors, right? But could we foster that sense of positivity? And again, Zach, you're so right. Could we all be looking at when there is something negative that happened? Could we have done something differently? Could we have propped up and encouraged, something or someone, organization, so that tough things like closures do not happen or loss of jobs do not happen? And again, I think there's lessons learned from this experience of communication of information, miscommunication of disinformation. I mean, there is so much that we can start to scrutinize and say, is this really the right thing that is happening? And to not just take things as face value, but rather start to ask, what else can we know about the circumstance? How else can we help? What else could we have done to prevent? And who else is suffering now that we might be able to proactively reach out to and support, right? And I think that the more that we can try to counter balance some of the, negativism and some of those, messages that are causing fear? How do we promote some of the truly hopeful stories, the human stories of helping and focusing on, the great things that children or teens are doing, great things that seniors are doing, great
Why do
things
you
that
think that stuff doesn't happen? Like, from a news perspective, like
Mhm, mhm,
I bet if I was to say, hey, why are you guys running your negative thing? They would say our data says that more viewers want to see the negative stuff than the positive stuff. They want to see the negative things surrounding them.
mhm, mhm,
So that's what they would say, right? But
mhm.
why aren't people gravitating towards the positive in this sense? Because they sure do seem in the comments pretty ticked off at the stuff that they're seeing. Like, why don't we see the gravitation of the positivity in the way that you're saying? Because I'm with you. I know Tim's with you, right? That
Mhm.
support staff is there from a positivity standpoint, but why don't we see that in the masses?
I would say that's probably human nature, right? Where we tend to gravitate towards um, the surprise. We're gravitating towards the, we can't stop watching some of the things that are negative. But I think it's part of our psyche where it's easier to process and almost get into that negative, that disappointment, and oh my gosh, okay, well, there's nothing else we can do, that helplessness. But I think if we look at especially entrepreneurs, right? They're the ones who are always optimistic that things could be better. And if we could start to really pattern and be consistent with, really countering what is being propagated in the media and what's being perpetuated on social media, I think we need to have that positive and optimistic revolution to really focus more on knowing that it's the optimism that is going to carry us through this. And there's no silver bullet. I think we just need to make that positive commitment to say life happens, and we know life is not always rosy, and we know we're going to get older, we're all going to get injured, accidents are going to happen. But can we start to agree that in order to get through all that, and in order to overcome some of those challenges and hurdles that we know life is all about, how do we really focus on that hopefulness and the positiveness and the optimism that we know make us on a day-to-day basis, but may not be getting into the headline news, because that's the nature of that business. But how do we maybe advocate and spread, the spirit of happiness and hope and wellness, and faith in each other and faith in the system, and to start to elect leaders that have that same sense of wanting to you know disrupt the cylinders of excellence, and want to disrupt the institutions and the systems that are creating and perpetuating the negativism and the divisiveness, right? And I know it's easier said than done, but I think we all just need to make that commitment,
Yeah.
and to start to in the venues like you're already doing, really elevating and sharing, many of those positive stories that
Well,
will
one
make
thing
it.
that's interesting that as you're talking about this, leveraging technology that I use to help positive, me being positive when I'm writing. So if you the tool Grammarly, a lot of people
Mhm,
use it just to make sure that they're using their
mhm,
punctuation correctly. But one of the parts of Grammarly, it actually analyzes how you write, and every week it sends you a report that, hey, this percentage of your writing was happy, this was direct, this was angry, this was encouraging. I mean, before you post anything or before you publish anything, it will analyze whatever you're writing, and it will tell you, hey, this is direct, or what type of tone are you looking for
mhm,
when you're writing this. And it's, to me, it's a fascinating tool to use, and I always try to keep everything positive and uplifting and encouraging. But
mhm,
that's just one of the tools that are out there that people can use to help with that. And to Zach's point, I mean, it's, you see all these businesses that will post and they don't get a lot of engagement. But boy, when they post something out that they're closing their doors, and then it's got all these shares, and then everyone comes out of the woodworks. Oh, I love that place. And it's like, well, where were you when they
mhm,
were open? They needed you then, and now it's too late. So
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
yeah, spreading the word of positivity is it's tough.
It is, and I think it is our opportunity now, as you all have um, acknowledged that we're in a time where all of us are going to look back and remember that this was really a time of heartbreak, but also what are the silver linings, as many people say. What are the things that emerged that came from this circumstance and this time? First, I would say this allowed us to acknowledge how much we need each other, how much we are human beings with hearts and minds and souls and spirits that benefit from each other and are truly wanting to reconnect and be in the presence of each other. So I think that's a positive. I think the technology, medicine was struggling on how to advance healthcare through technology, such as virtual platforms, and boom, the pandemic pushed us into that realm so quickly. And now, hopefully this will continue, and it'll continue to be an efficient and effective way of delivering services, medical services through telemedicine, telehealth, education. And we've also realized that there are strategies and businesses that succeeded throughout the pandemic. But what we've also realized is that lessons learned, that there were disparities there, you know um, differences in health outcomes that were preventable before the pandemic, and they were exacerbated during the pandemic. So how do we look at the systems now and set things up so that we prevent those disparities and prevent people from getting sicker or prevent people from being more disconnected, and realize that there are many brothers and sisters of ours in communities that are under resourced, that we could do better to help them. There are people within our organizations that were seeing unemployment or having to go to food banks or to food pantries that they never had to do in the past. And how do we you know set up a system so that's not going to be the case after this? And how do we start to look at you know mental health and wellness, and how do we keep ourselves healthy? How do we keep ourselves well? And how do we incorporate into our daily lives those strategies to breathe, those strategies to include physical activity, even more so? And again, I think there are going to be so many other lessons learned from all of this, but I think you're right. How do we leverage the alerts so that people will
Yeah.
start to act, not at the last minute, but be able to say, oh my gosh, how can we rally together and save that business before they close?
Well,
When we
one thing
see
that's interesting that before everything started, my wife worked from home, and I worked at an office doing my thing, and so she would be home all alone all day. And then when I would get home, she was ready to go. She just wanted to talk to somebody. And then I was at the office, and I was like, I've used up all my words for the day. I don't have any words left to say, and I just need some alone time just to kind of decompress. So I see that that's going to be like kind of the next unknown thing that people don't see coming as people start to go back to work and other people stay home from work. And yeah, how do you balance that too when people just want to talk to someone and then some people just want to decompress? I mean, it'll be interesting how that works out.
exactly. And I think what we've learned is that this is really pushing us to set expectations at the get-go, right? To be able to walk in the door and say, you know what, I need 30 minutes just to decompress and to breathe, and then you'll have all my ears and attention, right? And then the other person will say, oh my gosh, I'm going to need to talk with you just to get some human interactions, and to say, but when can I do that? And to set those expectations, that instead of jumping, we have to kind of anticipate, okay, let's understand each other's needs first, let's figure it out, and then really set that time, right? And I think what we're doing is getting out of our comfort zones of assuming all of us are kind of assuming what our loved ones, what our coworkers and what our, neighbors, are going to be expecting. But I think we have to, start to really articulate those and set those up front to say, here's what I will need. And then let's assure that we can help each other meet each other's needs, and again, I think really pushing us to communicate and almost over communicate what it is we're trying to get. And I think, again, realizing that as we are moving forward and starting to redefine and re-engage in social encounters, what is that really going to look like? And how do we again take advantage of the fact that we've been so disconnected? How do we start to say, you know what, we as a family, even as we get back into a new normal, how do we assure that we reconnect? How do we set the time to reconnect as a family without technology, but potentially leveraging technology? How do we reconnect? How do we start to, come back to the workforce and say, yeah, we've got to reconnect socially as employees, but how do we really be productive with what we're supposed to be accomplishing with our work objectives, et cetera? And how do we, re-encounter and regroup with each other at a faith-based organization, and to do it safely? And how do we assure that our neighborhoods are re-engaging and setting the strategies about supporting each other and recognizing, who might not be coming out of their homes, and should we, knock on the door and just make sure they're okay, and set the questions up to really ask, do you need any help with anything? How else can I help you? And not just the generic, are you okay?
Be a good
How?
human, right?
Yes, exactly,
Be a
exactly,
good neighbor.
exactly.
As someone who's been directly involved within the startup community for almost a decade, I want to talk to you about a serious pain point: spending a ton of time trying to understand the business landscape in the 757. That's time that should be focused on growing the business. At StartWheel, we're here to help you by compiling all of the news you need to know about in one place. Now there's no need to search multiple websites. Just head to startwheel.org and see for yourself. That's startwheel.org.